There we go. Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. First, fair warning, I grew up in Southeast Asia where things move very quickly, and I sometimes also speak very quickly. So if for any reason anything's unclear, please feel free to stop me or show distress on your face, and I'll be really happy to respond. First, thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate that, you're sort of forced to listen to me for the next 20 minutes without option. I also do want to thank the people and the sponsors who have put this event together that has allowed us to come in here. Before I go on any further, I think it's important for me to acknowledge that I work in Perth in Western Australia. It is the traditional land belonging to the Whadjuk Noongar people in Western Australia. I do want to pay my respect to the elders past, present, and emerging. Also, for strategic reasons today, rather than many screen grabs, I've elected to use illustrations in a lot of my slides. And these wonderful people and their artist aliases are the group of RAs I've been working with in the last few years. So thank you to their work as well. So first, thank you to Associate Professor Brady J for having us here. I think anyone who knows of Brady knows that their work is amazing, and it's easy to find smart people in academia, but it's not very easy to find people who are generous, collegial, and kind. And so in planning this event and having chats with him, I asked if I could be cheeky and also share some DECRA research that I haven't yet debuted, and Brady has been very generous in allowing me this space. So thank you, Brady. And also to everyone, because it is brand new work, I do ask that if you see this aggressive sign on the corner of the slide, to please not take any pictures or upload the content, but you're more than welcome to take notes, and I'm happy to share those resources when they become public. All right, here's the outline for today and a bit of orientation. The first three sections of the talk are here because I'm coming to you as a guest. I know a lot of people here are mostly from youth studies and in sociology. And back when I was a baby, sociology was my first degree. I've since moved on and landed into other disciplines, and I now work in internet studies. So for orientation purposes, the first three sections are going to be very quick top-level overviews of concepts or theories that can orientate us. I will not have the time to go very in detail, but you're more than welcome to take snapshots, and hopefully this helps us shape our conversation later on. And it's the last three sections that's really the gist for today, where I want to focus on this concept I've been working on called influencer ache. So first, orientation. Here are three major interventions I've been working on. So since 2008, I've been working on researching the phenomenon of internet celebrities. And of course, back then, we used to call these people bloggers or vloggers, or now really uncool, non-vogue terms. And that spread out into the larger social media pop culture ecology, where some of these people ended up becoming fashion models, memes, or entrepreneurs later on. That formed the backdrop of my entire research thus far, where I've mostly focused in Southeast Asia, the Nordic countries, and then more recently, the Asia Pacific. So that's part one of longitudinal ethnographic anthropological fieldwork informing the insights today. Part two comes from a 3+2 year project, 5 years in total, sponsored by the ARC through my DECRA, as well as a top-up scheme from my university, where I now got to look at influencers as a specific function. They are folks who are knowledge conduits. They are channels, ways, pipelines that help us translate, understand, decode, challenge, resist knowledge in different ways. And in doing so, I have focused specifically on the East Asian region. And each one of these slides is one instance of traditional field work where I got to work in that scene. I want to pull out a really quick example. So for instance, if we were to look at, say, in Tokyo, I got to go and interview a whole bunch of people who set up websites, companies, apps, but they claim that these are influencers who are in between spaces. Diaspora migrants are international people who have lived in Japan for a long time and therefore can give you the real recommendations for your holiday rather than being in a tourist trap. Or on the converse, rather than going to the very deep cultural, undecipherable aspects of local culture, let us be your guide and your navigators. So this has seen a move from just influencers as people from here all the way to how their knowledge and their systems have become systemized, corporatized, capitalized, but also pilfered by these big companies over the years. And finally, most of the research I've elected to share today is brand new, starting this year, from the Influencer Ethnography Research Lab based in Perth at Curtin University. A lot of them are ongoing projects. They're not yet in pretty formats, but reports are all due to be launched by this year, and I'm going to take this chance to share some ongoing work. Part 2, this is an FYI. It's going to be heavy. There's a lot on top-level theory, and I'm very happy to direct you to resources, but sit tight. Here's number 1. Before we can think about digital labor and influencers, we actually need to work out terminology, because we know that words are political. On an everyday basis, if I say a term and you say a term, we might be imagining different things. On an everyday basis, if I say green, and if you were a colorblind person, your concept of green might be different from what I'm seeing. So even in objective reality, we might be in the same space, staring at the same thing. Your psyche, your knowledge attached to the term, your bodily makeup and your anatomy that allows you to perceive these things would shape how we would see the same thing very differently, despite literally physically being on the same standpoint. On a more contemporary digital scale, if I wanted to look for literature review or scholarship on influencers and I search the term influencer, if you search the term creator, if someone else searched the term blogger, we would get wildly different responses and results that affect the cultural markets, the disciplinary framing, even the longevity of the research. So words are important. I don't think I need to preach to the choir here because we're all academics and this is our bread and butter. But to broaden out the scope, I find that the most useful baseline term for thinking about influencer digital work is the internet celebrity. Here is a very quick snapshot on the different things that this can refer to. You might be an unwilling meme that has gone viral. People know who you are. You never opted for that. You might be a cute kid who was once a meme and then activated this popularity for commercial reasons later on. You might have gone viral on the internet and then start on the Ellen Show and then become child actresses and then one day get pregnant the moment you turn 18 and become a mom YouTuber. But you could also be very traditional streamers, mukbangers, cover artists, Instagram models, blogshop models, and the like. And all of these, we tend to conflate under the term influencer, when really there are different implications for the politics, the money, the value, the reputation, the status. So words do matter. What is then more useful when we think about the internet celebrity? I think we need to think about visibility. Whether or not we are giving something physical attention or whether the algorithm automatically surfaces something so we see it first or it captures our minds and our feeds, this all boils down to visibility. And visibility doesn't really have morality attached to it in the first instance. They don't discriminate whether or not someone is famous for good or bad reasons, whether you're a good or bad influencer, whether you have talent or otherwise, whether you're making money or not. So visibility is more of this neutral, objective, measurable, quantifiable concept that we can use to define our celebrity on the internet. But the bits that you see in orange, these are the moral characters that may attach to the quality of your visibility. And it can be either or, it can be a combination of these. You can shift across the spectrum. But if you're an influencer who is essentially a professional internet celebrity who does this for a living, who earns money, then most of the time they opt for the moral qualities that are in bold. So influencers are careerist internet celebrities. Usually they are attributing their visibility to fame, positive attention, they have a talent, they're sustained, it's intentional. A quick recap. One big thing you need to remember is that influencers or internet celebrities arise from the grassroots on the internet, and they are distinct altogether from mainstream traditional public figures who happen to be really good on social media. So someone like the Kardashians, who's built their reputation in the celebrity circuit, being popular on Instagram, has a whole different reputation, production, security system than a YouTuber who later on may transit into Hollywood. Origin stories are important. Next, keep in mind also when we talk about why we feel connected to influencers, we often mean several different things. Do we like them because they're accessible, believable, because there's intimacy? And we need to break down this very big, vague term we always use, relatable. What really is relatable? Finally, for the people in the room who like numbers, whether or not you're mega, macro, micro, nano, or these days super nano, it really matters who and where you're talking about. This is not always neutrally just attached to a number. Depending on the scale of your market, how niche the genre is, how new the platform is, even how big the population is that speaks the language you vlog in or write in, we need to scale this middle column to attach to the categories on the left, and then the functions on the right attach to these 5 categories accordingly. Next, FYI, I want to also talk us through some different approaches to studying the influencer industry. This is a really nice summary of how I've been approaching my DECRA work so far. We can think about influencers being front and center, but in the whole ecology in the back end, they have clients, followers, industry, regulation, and platforms. And each of these arms break into different categories, concepts, and peoples that are behind the scenes or less thought about. Because the truth of the matter is a lot of the scholarship on influencers boils down to methodological convenience. Who are the top trending YouTubers that I'm aware of? What can I possibly scrape through a hashtag on Insta or on Twitter? Which are the names that people know about? Is it easier to study the creator who seems very visible versus all the back-end stuff that requires a little bit more thought and decoding and deciphering to access? Likewise, I also like to think about influencers in specific platforms based on a very 101 sociological way of understanding technical, cultural, social, and economic status or affordances, and these help us frame the different questions we ask of them. With influencer production pipelines in a different project, sometimes influencers are one-man, one-woman shows, where it's a single person managing everything like an octopus, but they look like they're a giant empire. In other instances, an influencer is no different from a celebrity figure, where there is a ginormous team, and this is a literal scene that I've observed in my research, brainstorming and working through a short tweet that you might want to put out or an Instagram photo. And all this is to demystify the production process behind the shiny things we see. Finally, I think we also need to acknowledge that there is an evolution in influencer culture studies. In some of the earlier work, we think about them as cultures of practice. We speak of bloggers, streamers, e-commerce stars. Later on, we tend to think about influencers as a concept and a role. Are they mediators, gatekeepers, misinformation stars, celebrities, bad role models? But also now we're beginning to think about them more in terms of profile and platform, amplifying and suppressing attention. Creators versus entrepreneurs versus influencers versus partners versus digital workers versus digital laborers. And all of these terms carry politics. With that being the scaffolding, please allow me to get into the nice, fun stuff that I want to get through today, beginning with influencer ick. Now, before I go to the next slide, I think I want to acknowledge in the room that oftentimes when I tell people I study influencers, their face twitches. Because you often think, why are you studying people who appear to be vain or who are just making money online, or you want to be this career that's unstable, or you might have the mindset that an influencer based on popular discourse is usually a young, skinny, white, able-bodied middle-class woman who's just out there doing middle-class fancy things. There's also influencer ick internal to the industry, where through several years of interviews, someone I interview who is squarely an influencer might go, no, I don't like that word. I'm a creative entrepreneur. Or someone else who used to identify as a blogger might one day come out and say, I'm a creator now, I'm a partner, I'm a digital worker. So there's an internal and an external cringe attached to the term influencer, but this has always been political. I find that one of the useful ways to trace this morality or effect is through the trajectory of attention economies. We are now well past stage 1, where we think about influencers as aspirational, the Instagram stage. We want to look at you because you're the top 1% and you're very desirable. We have also now passed stage 2, the antagonist. People who are watching drama YouTubers and you're in there for the goss or the tea and you're trapped in these attention cycles. Where I think we're now sitting is between stages 3 and 4, where during the pandemic, we went back to aesthetic influencers, people who bake bread, make tea, curate really beautiful settings at home as if life has no dust or that children are very easy. And we're now back to the amicable space where influencers are telling you, I'm de-influencing you by being truthful. I'm de-influencing you by telling you about the back-end monetary processes. I'm not like the others because I'm smaller scale, amateur, and I don't earn as much money. All 4 ways are in practice, different ways of doing parasocial relations and strategy to attract you. But as a consumer or a viewer on the other end, the labor and the work they put through the pipeline is different. We can also think about the work of influencers through vernacular norms. As a snapshot here are 6 platforms and the different ways we feel ick when we see them. On YouTube, too much drama and attention bait. On Tumblr, not safe for work folks. On blogs, people who basically plagiarize, even more so in the age of ChatGPT. On Instagram, the Insta-vagging. You see a pretty model and then like a Bible verse or a Hallmark quote and you're wondering what's happening. What am I supposed to make of this? And you're supposed to read between the lines to figure out what the situation is. So influencer ick can also result from platform-specific norms in these manners. There is also longitudinal discourse on influencer authenticity that affects the ick. This is a separate project I've been working on that aims to tear apart what we really mean when we say authentic on social media. There is the what of authenticity in different stages. We need to think about influencers' authenticity as juxtaposition. It's not a static category. I feel you're authentic because sometimes you have good days, sometimes you have bad days. Basically, as they say, you have range. And that's where people think, all right, if you don't have range, that's an ick because you're faking it. But you could equally be performing and faking your range in order for that to be a parasocial strategy. There is the how of authenticity, for instance, practicing ordinary and intimacy. Ordinary intimacy would be something like showing people your just got out of bed hair, your pimples, your vulnerability. And people who do that feel more relatable, whereas influencers who are always picture perfect and pristine then get the influencer ick again. There's also the so what of authenticity that I can't get very in detail to today. But in brief, there are 4 different eras that influencers have been transitioning through. We started with professionalization, where people were wanting to be called a blogger or a vlogger for status. We moved to monetization, where there was a distinction between people who are just blogging versus those who are earning money and could be counted as laborers. There was the era of platformization, where every platform rolled out a creator or a partnership program to streamline the labor and keep the money within that space. And finally, now there is the era of automation, where we're thinking, is this VR? VI a real person? Is Lil Michaela still hot? Do we care if it's a real person or just CGI? A separate project the lab has been working on is influencer imagery in popular culture. And this is a quick snapshot of 4 shows available on Netflix in Korea, Japan, Singapore, and Taiwan. In this one, a streamer was found to be so deceitful that she was kidnapped. And the perpetrator made her confess on the screen that all her antics with live streaming is to attract more male fans, and that ick there was that women would whore themselves out on the internet to get attention. The ick in this one, though, is a live streamer who is in a hospice and about to reach the end of life. And still on a daily basis, she lets people into her space, puts up pranks with other people in the hospice, and attracts attention until the end of days in order to preserve her image online. So even in studying popular discourse in these ways, we attach the influencer ick into everyday imaginary. In the second one, this is the politics of naming your job. Now, as I've introduced in the beginning, there are 3 different provocations or interventions. I've been working through this, but I'm going to share the last one coming out of the IER lab. One of the major things we've been working on is a project called Platform Creator Discourse. In brief, we've looked through 6 different platforms in the English market and 6 in the Chinese market and reviewed from the date of origin to present day, how have they been changing the discourse and how they speak to their users. For instance, we know that in 2015, due to an interplay of different dynamics and features introduced by Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter, a lot of these platform initiators were copying features from each other. Twitch was trying to be more like YouTube in doing TwitchCon or face-to-face meetings. YouTube was trying to become more like Spotify by launching a music app. And in these ways, they're trying to consolidate who a creator is, who a laborer is, what work can look like. Similar things have happened for the Chinese markets. This is an example of the Douyin Creator School for their creators. But for Xiaohongshu, for instance, we've seen 3 different eras where they've transited from just being lifestyle reviews to becoming Pinterest-style mood boards to becoming commercial shop fronts. So in brief, if I can summarize what the issue is with naming your influencer as a job, it is that there are really 4 big and broad ways to do this. By theory and concept, this helps you frame the field, the discipline, the field point. By platform and norms, it implies the legitimacy, power dynamics, and populism. By format and practice, you identify the technology, device, ability, and by culture and market, you demarcate the relevance, value, and politics. Last bit, why should we care and how is this relevant for the people in this room? I think the organizers have given us really good provocations to think about how digital work and influences may seep into all of this, but I leave you with 3 things. 1, all of this matters because it tells us whose stories we are telling. This is a snapshot of the recent books coming out on influencer cultures outside of America alone. So besides scholarship that looks at, say, aspirational lifestyle influencers in fashion, there is a wealth really out there across different economies. Number 2, how can we study the back end, the minority, the marginalized, the unseen, the suppressed, basically the people running the show and the factory to produce and maintain this labor? And finally, how does the visibility of your work translate into value, into money, into status, and then finally into group consciousness so that as workers, you can organize and come to represent yourselves? Thanks, that's all for me.